I don't really throw too many garden parties, but if I do, I'm ready. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below, and it'll give you a pretty good overview about what the Horror Movie Syllabus does. Essentially, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But this is our Is It Syllabus-Worthy series. This is where I take a recommendation from you guys, something that you reference in the comments below that I haven't seen before, a horror movie I'm not familiar with. I watch it for the first time, and then I let you guys know, is it syllabus worthy? Does it have something about it that makes it noteworthy enough to be on the horror movie syllabus? And if you haven't noticed the thumbnail or the title of the video, the movie that we're looking at today is Stung. And Stung was recommended to us by Nick Williamson, who has done a lot of really interesting recommendations for the channel. Some really good stuff, some really bizarre stuff. The Necrophiles was a recommendation that Nick brought to us a while back. And that one was something else, man. That was quite a trip of a movie. Check out the video on that one if you haven't seen it before. But Nick has a wide range of suggestions or recommendations for the channel. And in this case, he was responding to our tunnel video, which I think might have been our first recommendation video, our first syllabus-worthy series video. And he listed a whole list of movies with just a very little bit of information. And when Stung was on that list, and he said that it might be a so bad it's good / horror comedy / small creatures type movie. That's pretty much all I had to go on was that. I didn't watch any trailers, didn't look anything up, no reviews, nothing, not till after I'd seen the movie. And so I didn't have a whole lot more except that Stung and, the poster of the movie, something to do with insects. So I had that going in, and that's it. And so I went in blind to check it out and figure out what I thought of it. And so, did I love it? Did I hate it? Let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're looking at today is Stung. Stung came out in 2015 and was directed by Benny Dies, or Benny Dees, I think it's Benny Dies. And Benny is apparently known more for being an electronic musician, not so much as a director. This is his first feature film directing debut, but it is not his first directing because he's done a few shorts. I haven't seen any of this, don't know anything about him other than what I read in the research after watching the movie. But he is a new filmmaker when he's making this movie in 2015, and that's noteworthy for reasons that we'll get into in terms of my perspective on the movie and my thoughts on the movie. But we're going to get into all that in just a minute. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a pair of caterers who are working at a small garden party for the upper crust elite, and they are hosting it, doing a fine job. Everything's going perfectly smoothly until the party is attacked by giant mutated wasps, like 7-foot tall wasps. And the whole party goes awry. Terrible deaths are happening, and the remaining survivors have to figure out how to survive as the hijinks abound in this party, this garden party in this movie. So I'll stop there so as not spoil things too much for you, but the movie has kind of a ridiculous premise, and that is maybe one of its strengths. I think that is what appealed to Benny Dies when I did the research on him. He had found a script that was written by someone named Adam Aresti, and more on him in a little bit. But Benny had found this script that kind of spoke to him for a number of reasons. He liked the fun kind of schlocky concept of 50s creature feature throwback movie of just like monsters attacking. And he liked kind of the social commentary aspect of the upper crust elite being attacked by the monsters and the working class people having to save the day. There's some interesting things that he's thinking about in terms of concept and theme. And he also did a really good job with making the movie. And that's the first thing I want to hit on is how well made this movie is for a first-time feature director. It's got some really interesting camera work in there, some very clever shots. It's a very well-made movie from a technical aspect. The pacing is really strong. And again, doing the research, Benny coordinated with the cinematographer to make sure they had quality lenses and spent the money there on the cameras to make sure that this looked cinematic, that it looked professional and authentic and not cheap. And it doesn't look cheap. This is a very low budget movie, but it doesn't look like a low budget movie. It looks really well made. It looks like there's some money behind it, and it looks like there is a more talented, or more, I should say, more experienced director behind the camera than a first-time feature director. Doing a really good job here. The camera work alone is enough to make this movie stand out from other B movie schlock monster movies. And like I said, he's got these ideas, these kind of lofty ideas of what he wants this movie to say, and also what he's trying to homage. He referenced it in one of the articles I read, that he was trying to think about Aliens and Jaws, and movies like Slither and Gremlins, and again, all the creature features of the 50s, and he's trying to like pay homage to all of that. And I do think that shines through. I think that a lot of that does shine through in the movie. He's also got this idea of it being kind of a romantic comedy horror movie, a rom-com horror movie, and that's a clever idea. It's not something we haven't seen before. I've done a whole romance horror video on this, and so we've seen this kind of concept before. So it's not the most original thing in the world, but it's a fresher idea than just a straight-up monster movie. He's aware of what movie he's trying to make. He knows it's schlocky. He knows it's corny and cheesy, and he's leaning into that. He wants it to be fun. He's not taking himself too seriously, even though he's trying to set up a romance, even though he's got some ideas that there might be social commentary in here. He's not taking it too seriously. His primary goal is to make sure it's fun for the audience. And I think that he's paced it well for that. The wasps show up in about first 25 minutes or so, and they look good. The effects are good in this movie. They do a lot of practical puppetry for the wasps when they can, and then they've got some CGI for other shots, like some of the wider shots. The CGI is okay, and the practical effects, the puppets look good, and there's a lot of good gore in this movie. It's pretty solid. It's not going to blow you away if you're really used to like things like Hellraiser or stuff like that. But it's, again, for the budget, first time director, surprisingly good gore. It really is giving the audience that what they want. If what the audience is want to see monsters kill a bunch of people, which is what I want, it's giving you that. It's doing a really good job of that. Benny has a very clear vision, and he's delivering on that, and it's working gangbusters. It really is a big credit to him that first time out the gate, he's doing it this well, and intentionally, not even lucking into it. He has a plan, and he's executing it, and it's great. Where there is some weak spots is in the script itself, and then the characters from the script. This is where the movie struggles quite a bit. Like I said, the writer is not Benny Dyes. It's a man named Adam Aresti, and he had won a screenwriting contest for to try to get an entry in there, and he had based this script on his own life, where something that he was attending had to be shut down because of a wasp attack, and that's where he got the idea from it. And that's cool, using your life to inspire ideas, and it's kind of a fun idea. And again, conceptually, fun idea. The concept is good. It's the specifics that fall a little bit short. In particular, the jokes, the comedy don't hit, at least not for me. They fell pretty flat. And then the characters are dull to unlikable. There are a lot of kind of caricature type characters, which I don't have a problem with in general. But my problem is that, first of all, you've got a couple of noteworthy names. Again, they don't have a lot of budget, and they're spending it in, I think, the right places for the most part. They've got Lance Henriksen, they've got Clifton Collins Jr. in there to play some roles. And I mean, they're slumming it a little bit, and you can tell that they're not really giving it their all. It's not their greatest performances. In fact, nobody's particularly good in the movie. And I don't think it's so much a testament to the quality of the actors as much as it is a indictment of the script, that the characters aren't fleshed out enough, or given enough to do, or given enough likable traits to make them pop on the screen, to make them interesting on the screen. It's a big challenge for the movie. I kind of hated the characters within the first 5 minutes, and I mean all of them. I didn't like them at all in the first 5 minutes, and it never really improved. It never really got better. There were some characters, minor characters, that I thought were better. They were more interesting. They didn't stick around very long. Most of the main characters were a struggle, especially the lead, Matt O'Leary, who apparently he's done a lot of acting more as a kid, and I've seen a lot of movies that he was in as a kid. I don't recognize him. I don't really know him from Adam, but he's your lead, and he's kind of a cocky, smarmy guy, and I think he's supposed to be charming, but he's not. He doesn't have charm, he has smarm, and it's a big problem because I hated him right out the gate, and he's carrying this movie. And look, the actor's doing a fine job. I don't think it's a problem of him not having talent. I don't think he has an innate charm that makes him get away with being kind of an ass. You know what I mean? Like he comes off more like a Danny Dyer than he does like impishly charming, like say Brad Pitt or something like that. Guys that can play kind of dickish and get away with it because there's just a likability about them. He doesn't have that quality. He's more like Danny Dyer, who plays dickish and comes off like a dick. So it's a problem because he's your main character and he's your romantic lead, and you're not into him. At least I'm not into him. And so I don't buy the romance. I don't buy the romance at all. I don't buy. I mean, first of all, the female lead is kind of flat. All the characters are kind of flat and kind of dull, and she's just not that interesting. But then they don't have any chemistry. I never buy into the romance. So when the romance starts to actually become overt, I don't buy it at all. I'm just not there. It's not there. But it's not a huge detriment to the movie because this movie's not really relying on the romance. Like I said, Benny Dies knows what he wants to do. He wants to deliver a monster flick. He wants to deliver some gore and some action. And on that, he is delivering. It's just that the movie could have been enhanced so much more if I actually cared about the characters, if I actually liked the characters, and if they were doing something, a little bit more to make me not hate them, to make me like them, especially Matt O'Leary's character. It's just it's a problem that really stuck out throughout the movie, and it's unfortunate because I feel like this is something that could have been corrected. And this is maybe arguably the most detrimental thing for the movie was the lack of budget. It's true that Benny Dies gets the most out of his budget. He allocated it as well as he could have, and I think it's just not enough, right? He needed more because he focused on the technical stuff, and that was the right thing to do. The movie looks good, and he really knew what he was doing with the camera. Aesthetically, it's very pleasing. It looks professional. It looks good. The effects look good. The monsters are believable, and that's important because if they look stupid, you're not going to be into it. But they look good. They look scary. The gore looks realistic enough that you're into it, and it's fun. It's all fun. It's paced well. He's putting the money there, but they're you know. So one thing is taking a step back. The bugs look good. They are interesting. They aren't shown nearly enough. And I think, again, budget wise, they only had a budget to do so much. And so the bugs are hidden a lot of the time. They're shadowed a lot of the time. They're not seen as much. You kind of just hear what they're doing. And then, Benny Dice cited Jaws as an inspiration and something you want to pay homage to. And I think inadvertently he kind of does here because he doesn't show the bugs as much as he probably originally planned to. Kind of like Spielberg didn't show Bruce the Shark as much because the animatronic shark didn't work so good. And it winds up being a little bit more thrilling, a little bit more exciting and scary not seeing the shark. In this case, it hides the shortcomings of the puppetry and the effects to not show the bugs as much. And so you stay in the movie. You stay into buying into the gore and the scariness and the threat as opposed to it being totally laughable. It's laughable, but it's laughable when it's trying to be laughable. It's trying to have a good time and be a fun gore fest and not a totally serious, scary movie. And I think it's threading that needle pretty damn well. It's, again, using that limitation kind of to its advantage. Where the budget limitation hurts is in that script. If you could spend more time on that script, if you could have spent some money doing some rewrites on it, tightening it up a little bit, punching it up a little bit, making the jokes funnier, get somebody in there to add some better jokes because they weren't very good, getting some better dialogue in there. Because again, the concept of the script is fine. It's good. It's just the specifics, the particulars about the dialogue and whatnot are falling short. And if you could have spent more money on that and also spent some money leaning on the actors a little bit more, taking more takes, giving more direction to them, because I gather with a tight budget, you're not at the luxury of just taking a bunch of takes, filming a bunch of takes, taking multiple days to film scenes. You kind of have to go with what you've got, and you don't really have a lot of time to be nitpicky. So I don't know if Benny Dies just isn't very good at directing people because he's not that experienced, or if it's just he just didn't have the budget to take the time to coax out the performances that he would want of them. And again, it's hard to do that anyways because the script dialogue is not good, and so it falls short in that sense that even if you have good actors like Lance Henriksen, like Clifton Collins Jr., very good actors, there's not so much they can do. But if you had more time, perhaps you could have gotten more out of them, or they could have helped the script along, or again, do some on the spot rewrites to fix some of the dialogue, punch it up a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting, and then maybe spend a little bit of money to get a more charming lead. Matt O'Leary is fine, but he doesn't fit this role super well. I did not like him. I disliked him, and not because the actor was bad, because the character was unlikable. He had no charm. He's not funny enough or interesting enough or good enough to buy that somebody would love him, to buy him as the leader, and to want to stick with him throughout the entire movie. So that was a big problem for me, a really big problem, how much I disliked the lead. And maybe somebody a little bit more charming, somebody who has a little bit of an innate charm, like Timothy Chalamet maybe comes to mind, somebody who's just kind of charming no matter what role he's playing. I'm thinking about Bones and All. He's just charming, even though well, anyways, we've talked about that movie already. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But a more charming lead might have gone a long way towards improving this movie. But even with that, Benny Dies did do really good with the money that he had. And there's a lot of positives and there's some negatives, some strong negatives in this movie. But where does it shake out? Like, does it wind up being more positive than negative, and does it wind up being good enough to be on the horror movie syllabus? Let's find out. So, is Stung syllabus worthy? For me, I'm saying it's kind of right on the line for me. Uh, I think some people would say it does squeak into the syllabus, but I'm going to say it probably falls just a bit short for me, just a bit short. And I think Nick was on the right track here for some of it. I think that if you're going to put this in the syllabus, it's going to be a so bad it's good scenario where it fits into that subgenre, because it's not really, at least for me, it's not funny enough to be a horror comedy. The balance is not right. The comedy doesn't work for me. And Small Creatures, I mean, the wasps are 7 feet tall in the movie. They're not terribly small, so I don't think it even qualifies for that for me. But the movie might be a so bad it's good for some people, but I think for me it's going to fall short of that, because it's not really so bad and it's not really that good. Like, the movie's well made for the most part, and so I don't think it's a bad movie. I really don't think it's a bad movie. It's not a particularly good movie either, though. I would say really the bad for me kind of outweighs the good. Like, the script shortcomings and the performances really, especially the lead, really stick out like a sore thumb for me. Like, the romance aspect of this movie doesn't work at all for me. The jokes don't work at all for me. So it becomes a little bit tedious. The thing that does work for me is the wasp attacks, the gore, the monster aspect of it. That worked really, really well. And so it was a close call for me, because I was having a good time for most of this movie, but there were long stretches in the middle where it was just a bit of a slog. And so, again, not a bad time at all. I actually had fun watching the movie. It's just not enough fun to squeeze under the syllabus, considering even in the so bad it's good category, some of the stuff that qualifies there. Like I mentioned earlier, Nick had already previously recommended The Necrophiles. That's a so bad it's good movie. That's a wild trip of a movie where it's really just going bug nuts crazy, and just it's hilarious, kind of sometimes unintentionally so, sometimes very intentionally so. And so I couldn't help but compare this movie to that movie because, again, of the connection with Nick. And this one just doesn't bowl me over like that one did. So it's not enough to squeeze its way on. Like, it's a fun movie. And credit again to Benny Dice. I got nothing but respect for what he's done here, because he really understood the assignment. He was leaning in to this movie being fun. He didn't want to spend a lot of time being terribly serious about it, even though he had some ideas, some serious themes about, capitalism and the working class and stuff like that he wanted to explore. He didn't really, you know, let that sidetrack him from the mission, which was have fun. He made a fun movie. He made the most of what he had to work with, and did a really good job overall. Just not good enough for me, at least, to find its way onto the syllabus. It just falls a bit short. So that's my thoughts on Stung. Again, had a really good time with it. It's probably worth your time if you like these kind of movies, these monster movies. I think it delivers on the goods in that regard. So I think you'll have a good time. I think I'd recommend you guys checking it out. It just falls short for me. But let me know in the comments if you disagree. If you've seen the movie, do you think it earns a spot on the syllabus? Do you think it's good enough to squeeze its way on there? Because I don't. But there's a close call for me, so it might be a close call for you too. I'm curious to hear what you guys think of it. And now I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this Trivia Pursuit horror card that I'm going to read. It's a tradition here that we like to answer the questions live on camera and see if we can avoid embarrassing ourselves. And so today's question is going to come from the monster category for the obvious reasons. And the question is this. Who composed the famous theme for 1975's Jaws? This one, I feel, is a very easy question. If you know anything about film scores and music composers, I think this one's fairly easy. And maybe just me telling you that it's enough of a clue if you don't actually know the answer outright. Jaws, we've talked about Jaws. You've seen me wearing the Jaws t-shirt. Jaws is a classic. It is a classic Steven Spielberg movie, an early movie, and he crushed that movie. We talked about it a little bit in this video, actually, because of Stung being a little bit of an homage to Jaws and how they hid the monsters and everything like that. So it's a movie that is a classic for a reason. It's very well made, and part of it is the iconic film score by this film composer. It is so well known that even here we are 50 years later, the movie still resonates with people in no small part because that score is still famous. People who haven't even seen the movie know the score. That's how famous it is. It's a famous piece of music from a famous composer. Again, I'm kind of giving you hints there. And this composer has written many, many super recognizable, famous pieces of music, and this is one of the most famous ones. So I'm kind of prattling on to give you a little bit of time to think about it. But honestly, you guys probably know this one. I know this one. I'm 100% sure I know this one. And I imagine a lot of you guys do too. So lock in your answers. I'm going to go ahead and do my answer right now. My answer is, of course, the great John Williams, the composer of Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Superman and Jaws. So, yes, he is the greatest film composer of all time. It's pretty much undisputed. And let me just double check the card, make sure I'm right. Yep, John Williams. Yeah, of course, it's John Williams. And it's, again, not a hard one at all, but it's nice to think about John Williams and the legendary work that he's done. So if you haven't seen Jaws by some stretch of some stroke of bad luck, by all means, please see Jaws right away. And then, think about seeing Stung also. Again, Nick, thank you for the recommendation. Had a good time with it. Didn't quite make the grade, but it doesn't mean it was a bad movie. I had a good time with it. And I would be curious to hear how y'all think of it as well. Do you guys think it's a good time? Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Nick? Let us know in the comments. And let me know what other movies I should be checking out that I haven't seen before, because I'm enjoying your guys' recommendations. So keep those coming. Until next week when we do something completely different, I'm just going to say, class dismissed.